Okay, good afternoon. Welcome everybody to the Climate Change and Nature Recovery Service Transformation Committee. Just like to note that because this meeting this afternoon is online only, it is a little bit trickier to chair than usual. So if you do put your hand up and I miss you for whatever reason, then please feel free to let me know. Okay, so first of all, do we have any apologies for absence?
No apologies, Chair.
No, okay. And number two, any disclosures of personal and prejudicial interests? No, okay, that's great. Point 3, minutes. Can we approve and sign the minutes of the previous meeting as a correct record? Councillor Rice?
Sorry, Chair, I was just coming in. I'm having problems with my camera today for some reason. I don't know why it's not working, but okay. I've also wanted to declare an interest in being an employee of Pumping Air Trust as well, because it may have an input on the agenda.
Okay, that's lovely. Thank you. Noted. Okay, so the minutes of the previous meeting, are there any problems with that? No, can I get a proposer?
Yeah, I'll be proposed, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Can I get a seconder?
I'll second it, Hannah.
Thank you, Councillor Baker. Okay, that's brilliant. So on to agenda point 4, the NOMO May trials. We're going to get an update from Jeremy and Mark. I'm not sure which of you is going to start us off. Is it you, Jeremy?
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. Thank you, Chair.
Lovely, thank you. Over to you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you ever so much for giving myself and Mark the opportunity to update you on the subject of NOMO May. I think it would be useful for the committee to benefit from some background before proceeding into what the current work and practices are, so I'll start there. If you wish to interrupt me at any stage and ask any questions, then by all means do so, but probably beneficial to keep those to the end so that Mark or I can decide who's best placed to answer those. So NOMO May is an initiative which is promoted by the charity Plant Life, whose aim is to protect and restore plant and fungi habitats. The initiative is primarily focused on the general public's approach to maintaining their own gardens and lawns. However, many larger organisations, including local authorities, endeavour to support, promote and involve themselves in the principles. NOMO May has the headline of "Don't mow this May and let it grow," the idea being that it will provide a feast for pollinators, tackle pollution, reduce urban heat extremes and lock away atmospheric carbon below ground. Residents are actively encouraged to take part. However, they will see the council either leaving some areas long, cutting some areas in May, or not cutting at all for longer periods, and this has led, quite understandably, to questions from residents and members alike. In early 2021, the Economy, Environment and Infrastructure Policy Development Committee, as it was then, asked a subgroup of officers and members to look at different ways of working in relation to our management and maintenance of open spaces, with a particular focus on their biodiversity. The main output from the subsequent working group has been supporting a substantial trial of the Cut and Collect programme over the last 3 years. This cross-departmental collaboration between parks and nature conservation teams seeks to cut suitably identified areas once or twice a year and remove the cuttings, unlike the historical practice of multiple cuts and dropping the cuttings. Removal of grass clippings at the right time plays a major role in maintaining species-rich vegetation in parks and on verges, curbing the growth of vigorous plants that smother their neighbours and helping to reduce soil nutrient levels. It also removes the thatch of dead vegetation, exposing underlying soil and giving wildflower seeds room to germinate. It has been a substantial undertaking, with nature conservation successfully bidding for high-value agricultural equipment from the Welsh Government's Local Places for Nature programme, and thus enabling the Park Service to carry out the works. It should be noted that the collection and disposal of the cuttings is logistically extremely challenging and very resource hungry. You can find more detail about the work that we conduct in Cut and Collect under the council website simply by searching Cut and Collect Trial. In addition to this work, the working group decided to look at No Mow May, whether there were any additional benefits to the work already being carried out. And as such, we offered a trial to members in 2023. The take-up was mixed, and similarly, with whether we do or do not cut grass regularly, there was mixed resident support as well. In addition, we had several logistical challenges, including leaving larger areas uncut for a full month that the larger equipment could then not get into which caused a severe backlog of works and damage to some of our equipment. This backlog and damage, coupled with the change in climate, meaning that May can either be ideal or very wet, and therefore causing further damage to the land by taking equipment on to cut it, were all unforeseen circumstances and consequences. As such, the biodiversity gain was low compared to the cut and collect versus the costs of the service, which were unsustainable. It became very clear that there are no significant additional benefits and that our existing cut and collect trial was already achieving No Mow May. The fact that we did not advertise it again in the same way in 2024 gave rise for some to take the view that Swansea Council was not taking part, but this is simply not the case. We are taking part, and in fact, we're actually going above and beyond by leaving some 144 hectares of traditionally cut sites unmown over the whole of the spring and summer, April to August and September. This is therefore considered the gold standard rather than No Mow May, which is an introductory measure. Consequently, it is preferable to continue with our cut and collect trial and consider expanding this, subject to funding and resources. It is noteworthy that through our cross-authority working groups, we have established that numerous other local authorities in Wales are adopting a similar approach and not focusing on No Mow May as a single initiative, although still promoting residents to achieve it in their gardens. However, where members wish parks to consider an area for No Mow May or cut and collect, we're happy to receive suggestions, and if the right gains are achievable with the equipment and resources that we have versus the risks we uncovered during the trials, then we will of course seek to improve our regimes to increase biodiversity. That concludes my verbal update. Happy to take any questions.
That's great. Thank you, Jeremy. Do we have any questions so far? Councillor Rice.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Jeremy, for that. That's really interesting as a report back on both subjects. Would you be able to sort of give us a little bit more information of the biodiversity benefits of cut and collect and what's been noticed through that? I mean, for example, what is now growing or flowering that didn't grow or flower before through that kind of principle?
Thank you for the question. If it's okay, I'll bring in Mark on this one because he and his team have been keeping a close eye on the areas that we've been doing the cut and collect trial and surveying them for that very reason. So I'll hand over to Mark if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine. Thanks, Jeremy. Councillor, yeah, so we've been undertaking monitoring on all the sites where we've been doing the cut and collect, and although it takes time to see huge changes, we've definitely seen larger numbers of wildflowers being able to flower for longer throughout the year compared to normal kind of cut and drop procedures. And then also through the trials, we have been planting some extra species that through the monitoring we weren't finding in the first couple of years. And we've also put some yellow rattle seed down, which has also helped with the process of increasing it for biodiversity. Anything else? Sorry.
Sorry, Councillor Rice, is there anything else?
No, that's really positive, and I can see use of yellow rattle is going to be really good to try and get the number of species up as well. So yeah, I just watch with interest how that develops, and with other hats on, I'm always interested in what's going on there. Thank you.
That's great. Mark, did you have any further updates that you wanted to add to Jeremy's?
No, I think Jeremy covered everything perfectly. Thank you.
Okay, great. Are there any other questions or points from other committee members? Councillor Baker.
Hi. My concerns about non-mowing me were few around the tenants in this area, Penderry. We got a large amount of green areas, and people were saying, oh, people see the long grass, the trees growing up, bushes growing wider, and people dumping in the bushes. And I've been asked, why didn't they cut the grass? They would have seen this, they wouldn't dump. The same with the bushes. I said, well, people shouldn't dump anyway. But that is a problem within this area. When we leaving it grow for the diversity of different insects, such as we've got more butterflies up here and on that way. But at the end of the day, people are nagging us, can these areas be cut back because the amount of rubbish people are throwing over into the long grass, dumping really. That's the only thing I can put forward. I'm up for the non-mowing May, but when the long grass in big areas has not been cut down, there is a lot of uptake of people dumping black bags, bits of furniture, and it goes on that list would, which I think is very wrong.
Thank you, Councillor Baker. Yes, I do sympathise. I've got areas in my ward where overgrowth is sometimes used as a bit of a cover for people who want to get rid of some of their things rather than disposing of them responsibly. Like you say, it's not ideal, but you know, those people will often be fly tipping whatever the circumstances. They'll find somewhere. I think that's my personal opinion. Councillor Jones, have you got a comment there?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thank you for the update, Jeremy and Mark. Very informative and fully behind the scheme as well, to be honest. You did mention, Jeremy, that this year we haven't done maybe as much PR on it as we have done in years gone by. Was that, is there any particular reason for that? I think it's public perception in some areas that it's, when the grass isn't getting cut to like a Bowles Green standard, that it's cutbacks in general for the local authority rather than a biodiversity benefit for the area. So was that a conscious effort not to do a PR on it, or just something we didn't think was necessary?
Thank you for the question, Councillor. I think it's part of our lessons learned around the communication this year. Last year, and particularly at the start of the cut and collect trial itself, we did a lot of publicity through our own website, social media channels, involvement with the communications teams to show what we were doing around the cut and collect programme, because we have significant concerns around that perception that we're not cutting in an area, so there must be resource cuts within the service areas leading to that, including putting up substantial signage on most of the sites where the work was being undertaken. Unfortunately, nearly all of it was stolen, which was extremely frustrating because of the work that had gone into that. And it had to be temporary in its nature by the fact that we were trialling and moving about. So putting permanent signage in would have caused us further problems. The No-Mow May was something that we looked at as an addition, as I said, to the cut and collect programme, and relatively quickly before it was due to occur, we put some comms out to members to say, would there be an appetite for this to at least trial it? What I would concede is that our communication could have been better this year, in the fact that we could have given a summary of that to say that we felt that there weren't sufficient gains, and therefore our cut and collect programme was achieving that as a gold standard. As I said, the area of improvement in communication there would have perhaps reduced the perception of the fact that we're just not doing it, which is really what was coming across. So what we're doing is we're moving into the third/4th year of the cut and collect trial, and we'll be working with a comms team to put a new piece out towards the end of this season and also prior to next season, just to reiterate the cut and collect programme does incorporate the same principles as No-Mow May. So we are in fact actually delivering it. It just doesn't come under that umbrella with that title. So it's something that we did recognise, and it's something we're going to improve on.
Deb, did you want to come in here?
Yeah, so just really quickly, I think the other thing that, is important is mowing the edges, so that it makes it really clear that it's not just that we're not bothering to do any mowing, but if we can maintain neat, tidy a metre or so in around the edges and pathways through, then it becomes more obvious that it's a deliberate strategy, not just as Jeremy says, lack of resources to cut the grass. So I think that's worked quite well in some areas.
Councillor Keaton.
Yeah, hi. Yes, going with what Deb said, that is important, because we found when we were doing nature walks for the children, they could get right into the grass, and if they can get in along a path, they can see what's there and can sometimes catch some wildlife running around that they wouldn't normally do. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Keaton. Yeah, I think that's a really important point, and it also goes back to what Councillor Baker was saying previously about the fly tipping issue and aspect of it as well. Is that I think I've certainly seen it in my ward. There've been some areas where square chunks have been left wild and it's been mown around the edges, and I think for the said that's been quite successful. It is a real shame that some of the explanatory signage has disappeared. Unfortunately, we do see that, don't we? But yes, it would be a lot better for the public, I think, if they had that awareness, unfortunately. It's really, really good to hear that we're reaching the gold standard. It's really good to hear from Mark that biodiversity seems to have a very positive improvement since the scheme. And as a sometimes gardener, I have every sympathy with the variations in the weather from month to month, shall we say. I'm certainly, it's very difficult to predict what seasons are going to be doing what at the moment. So yeah, I think having that flexibility and not being bound within that time constraint is a really important point to consider. I've certainly lost all of my courgettes to slugs and all the rest of it, and I'm giving up on my garden this year, but anyway. Okay, are there any other questions and points on the update on the No Mow May trials and the cut and collect scheme? No, sorry.
Sorry, I was just looking to press the thing to put my hand up. Just to ask, sorry, I came in a little late for the meeting.
No
could I ask, did you sort out the machines, the actual lawnmowers that you use? Lawnmowers, you know what I mean, the cutting, because you said there were problems with the long grass and cutting it.
Yes, the issue that we encountered was that by leaving some of the areas grow much longer, our existing lower decked ride-on equipment couldn't get on to cut it without it causing damage to them. And it raised a few eyebrows of what grass causing damage. But when you think about the length of it and the scale and the size, and particularly where some of it would have been wet, some of that machinery is not designed. So where we would then need to get on and deal with that, we had to attempt to put our cut and collect equipment on to deal with those large areas of uncut, and due to the weight of that equipment, it caused damage to the ground. So it became a bit of a catch-22 situation. And what we realised is that the benefits that we were gaining from those smaller sites were consequential compared to the cost of the service around trying to do that going forward, and that actually the larger areas of the cut and collect programme that we're delivering far outweighed those smaller ones. So it's a fine balance without shadow of a doubt, and we still look to areas where members or residents recommend to us that we might want to consider, and we're more than happy to receive that sort of feedback. It isn't a closed service by any stretch of the imagination. Expansion is dependent on resources as well, and we'll be reporting again around when we come to get more data on the trial around the feasibility for it to become business as usual, because it's something I didn't put in my verbal update there. It is a bit of a myth that if you cut less, it's then less resource, less work to do. It's actually manoeuvring it into different ways of working. But yes, we have overcome that on the basis that we need to be very careful about the sites that we select, and the changing climate can cause us to go into a position where we can't then get in and cut it because we cause damage, and that then is counterproductive.
Yes. So is that the cut and collect ones that were actually causing the trouble? Oh,
they will do, yeah, they will, because they're large towable machinery behind agricultural tractors. In the main, we are trialing some smaller ride-on type cut and collect equipment, but even they're substantially heavier because of the hoppers and collecting the materials. And then they've got to have trailers running alongside them to be able to tip them into, and those are towed by agricultural tractors as well. So it's challenging logistically, but it doesn't mean we shouldn't try.
No, thank you, Jeremy. Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Councillor Rice.
Thank you for letting me come in again. Jeremy, just as a quick question, do you use the flail? Is that what you're using to try and cut and collect? What do you use?
No, it's specialist equipment. If you have a look at the cut and collect site on the page on the council site, there's actually an image there which shows one of the main towed cut and collect machines that goes behind the agricultural tractor. But we also have a larger ride-on device, two of now, that the operatives can sit on. I mean, flail, when I talk about flail, I think about the agricultural ones that we carry on the back of the tractors that we do the roads, etc. with. It has a flail function within it to cut. It's not bladed in the same way that you would, say, have a residential lawnmower, but it's not flailed in the way that it's got a hydraulic arm coming off a tractor. It is actually a specified device that the Nature Conservation team were very successful in getting grant funding for us to be able to purchase, because they're very expensive.
That sounds really good. I mean, I'd be very interested to find a sit-on lawnmower that will deal with high grass, because usually none of them will do more about 3 or 4 inches.
Yeah, our main fleet of ride-on equipment can handle somewhat longer than that with raisable decks, of which we do have that fleet. But again, that's normally beyond the financial capabilities of residents, etc., because they are substantially pieces of equipment and extremely expensive, not only to purchase but also to maintain.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a really great update. Thank you, Jeremy and Mark. I think it's really good for us to be informed about this whole process, because I've certainly had residents get in touch with me and say, hang on a minute, it's the second week of May and I've just seen people cutting down all the grass, and for us to be able to explain the process and the flexibility of it, I think is really good. And unfortunately, I think we are going to be seeing a lot more seasonal shift and a lot more unpredictable weather. So being able to be flexible with that for the benefit of our biodiversity, I think is really important. So many thanks to you for the report and to the team for their work.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions and comments before we go on to the next agenda point? I don't think so. So point 5, local development plan. Do we have Tom here?
Yes, I'm here, Chair.
Hi, I couldn't quite see you on my screen. People are
hiding in the corner.
Little boxes are jumping around, you know what it's like.
Okay. Would you like me to go ahead, Chair?
Yes, please. That would be great. Thank you.
That's fine. Afternoon, Pnawn Darol. It's a relatively short verbal update from me today, and really what I'm doing is just giving you the grouping a heads up, really, and advance warning of me coming to the committee later. In fact, it's down for January 2025. Seems a long way in the future, but it's going to come down pretty quick. But there's an item on the agenda then for me to go to table a report and go through with you in some detail matters relating to a key stage of the new LDP. But what I just wanted to do quickly today was to just make you aware of the time frame really, and what's going to happen in advance of that, or round about that time. And just picking up on the detail then, and as by way of a very quick reminder of where we are, we're in the process, the early stage processes of replacing the current adopted LDP, and there has in doing that, there has already been, through the course of this year, it commenced for about 12 months or so ago, last summer, but during the course of this year there's been a fair amount of engagement and conversations had with stakeholders, and including with members, but stakeholders and partners on some of the real sort of key issues that will be fundamental really to the plan review, and that includes matters related to climate change and nature recovery. So for instance, the engagement had within internal teams of the council, but also externally with organisations like Natural Resources Wales, and as I say, with a dedicated member engagement group that we have on the LDP. We've had a number of sessions with them, and all of that has been building up for this first key stage of the process, where a report will be brought to a meeting of the full council, which I sincerely hope will be by the end of this year, and that's to approve what's known as the pre-deposit document, and it's also called a preferred strategy of the LDP, and really it's the summary of what our new strategy is going to be, what are our overarching objectives to achieve, what are our ambitions in terms of levels of growth, and our sort of development requirements, our needs for new housing, but also our sort of corporate priorities, including again, to highlight the climate change and nature recovery agendas. So all of that will be brought together in a sort of strategy document, and that's, to say, going to be towards the end of the year, and that's going to have a very wide-ranging public consultation and engagement with all sorts of groups. And as I said, what I want to do at that time is to bring a report to this committee, just highlighting some of the elements of the strategy that will perhaps be of most interest, and to get your input, your views on where the sort of where we're going with that in terms of the strategy that's being tabled, and that will really help us to refine things then during the course of 2025 in producing what is the really detailed replacement plan, which is a whole set of new development management policies and specific site allocation proposals and so on, that you perhaps should be more familiar with in terms of what an LDP does. That will all be done over the course of next year, and this strategy that I'm talking about will underpin all of that, and it'll be as I say, published in that form of a pre-deposit document, which we'll put out for consultation to discuss with all sorts of stakeholder groups and committee groups like this, to be able to reflect on that and shape it as it goes into the detailed deposit plan into next year. That's really it, in terms of just giving you as I say, all about the heads up really for what I want to be talking with you about in a few months down the line. But hopefully it's been useful just to scope it out, but you're aware of what's going on really. Certainly you will be when the report comes to council later on in the year. And as I say, there is a dedicated member involvement engagement group on the LDP, which has cross-party representation, and the next session of that will actually meet at the end of this month to consider some of that draft information that's coming forward by way of the strategy. So that's where we are. Happy to answer any queries, any questions on any of that I've set out, or if you just have any general queries about the process and where we're going to be going from here.
Thanks, Tom. That's really helpful. Councillor Rice.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Tom. Just a couple of questions, more probably about when to move on these issues and what's the right relevant stage. In terms of supplementary planning guidance, which would help nature, say, for example, if I was imagining trying to adopt Brighton's policy on swift blocks, for instance, in new developments over a certain height or scale, when would be the key time for that? And the other one is really, I suppose, more a series of principles, and when they would be the right time to sort of introduce into the document or in terms of consultation. I mean, from my perspective, I'd like to see the LDP concentrate on a focus on brownfield and greyfield sites before it would think about more greenfield sites. And within the LDP as well, looking at ways in which we can protect connectivity between green sites for biodiversity and sort of green corridors, as it were. And what could be done in terms of planning gain, in terms of 106 agreements or similar, in terms of protecting or leaving mitigation sites which are connected in some kind of way. So either it be river basins or woodland corridors or wherever it might be, because it's when are those principles the key time to talk about them or to give some details on that. That's really, I suppose, why I'd like a bit of guidance. I know that you said you're coming back to the group and there'll be a chance for councillors in general to come to council, but if anybody wants to try and work with groups or work up some ideas, when would be the time to sort of present them or to try and get them into the mix so that it's not too late, as it were?
Yeah. No, the great questions there, because what that is teasing out is the difference between what are overarching objectives and principles, as you say, that underpins production of a detailed plan, and what is classed as, you know, something that is a lot more detailed and that will go in either into the precise wording of a policy, something like, as you mentioned there, you know, all development must include the provision of XYZ. Now that's something that can be defined in is best defined in a detailed policy, or as you say, that there is a very detailed guidance which, for example, describes how you go about this process of delivering biodiversity enhancement, and we already have a relatively recently produced SPG, you probably know, on biodiversity and development. Because that kind of level of detail of guidance couldn't possibly all go into, wouldn't be sort of appropriate to put that into a development plan policy. But you have the hook within the policy itself to tell developers what they're expected to do, and then the guidance essentially, you know, describes how that can be achieved. And so that's the stage. That's the stage for the detailed aspects. Is, as I say, later into next year when we're crafting detailed policies. That will be there'll be a sort of workshop process that goes into that, but there also will be full public consultation on draft policies where you get opportunity to, you know, to really get stuck into that. And sometimes it's useful to produce planning guidance alongside a policy. Like, for example, it's a really good example, the one you said on planning obligations. You know, that's ideally that's something that should be delivered, that should be produced in draft alongside the new policy for planning obligations. You know, essentially, how will the council go about delivering or requiring wider community benefit from its development? You know, what are our priorities? What calculations will be involved in for example, generating the commuted sums for whatever sort of type of planning game it is. So that would be a good example, I think, of something where ideally that would be produced alongside. But certainly you can. The process does allow the plan to be adopted and then planning guidance to be produced in the years afterwards, and that is often the way that these things go, because the amount of time that it takes to produce this kind of detailed guidance. But yeah, that's something that we talk about as we go, and can, as I say, get stuck in the detail about as we go into next year. But the other question, as you say, highlighting, well, when is best to lay the foundations of what are the sort of governing principles of the plan? Well, that is really what the preferred strategy is about, and it is, preferred strategy will set out, how we, for example, again, as you highlighted, what's our approach to, in sort of spatial terms, or type of approach to allocating development. Are we going to have, for example, an exclusive focus on just brownfield land in settlements, and do we propose to meet all our need for future housing, for all types of housing, for the next, for the 15 years plan period, just on brownfield sites, or do we have aim to exhaust all brownfield sites where possible for that, and where there needs to be greenfield land, then that they should be sustainably planned for and create new neighbourhoods that deliver this kind of biodiversity enhancement that we're talking about, and that in overall terms meet our ambitions and objectives in terms of climate, nature recovery, and responding to the climate emergency. So that is, as I say, something that needs to be spelt out in the first strategy. We've already done the consultations on the different options. As I say, throughout the course of this year, we've been talking about what kind of different approaches we could take to the strategy, and this is the time really to put it forward. But as I say, it's subject to consultation, and if we feel like that we haven't set out the key issues or the overarching objectives, or even elements of the main strategy quite right, then that's what the engagement will be all about. And in that report in January, as I say, I'll tease out the aspects that I think hopefully will be of most interest to the committee.
Thanks, Tom. That's really helpful. Sorry, Councillor Rice, did you have anything further?
No, I just wanted to thank him, Chair.
Okay, great. Any other committee members have any questions or comments so far? No, nothing as yet. Tom, is there anything in particular that you think would be a good idea for the committee to have a think about in the meantime? Obviously, it is quite a technical and long process, and if there are any questions that you think it would be particularly helpful or useful for the process, that for committee members to kind of mull over before January, then is there anything really that we should be considering in the meantime?
I think probably one of the most useful things for the committee to do is what I'll do is post in the chat the link to our virtual consultation room, which hopefully some will have already seen, as I say, as part of the engagement process already been done. And the documents and the material already produced really get you thinking towards the sort of stuff that we're needing to be decide on in relation to the strategy. So that material is still live. Obviously, the consultation period is closed. Notwithstanding that, I'm always happy to receive any thoughts from the committee as we go forward over the next few weeks and months. But yeah, usefully, all the material is still there, and it's a really nifty little thing actually in terms of the virtual room. Go in, have a look around, read the posters and read the brochures and so on. comfort of your own home, really. So I think that's what would be useful to do, just by way of a precursor to the next document coming out. As I say, hopefully the end of this year, but if it isn't, then it'll be early next year to start that consultation.
Tom, is it worth mentioning the green infrastructure assessment and links to picking up with Stuart's comment about connectivity, that that's in progress at the moment, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's a reminder from Deb there that the document that actually goes out, that there is the sort of legal requirement to produce as a council is this, well, as I say, what's known as a preferred strategy, but you can't just write it up and put it forward without having the benefit of an awful lot of evidence and data and supporting docs that sit behind it. So when there is a consultation, it happens on the main document, but also on all sorts of stuff, stuff that deals with economic issues from the social side, the cultural side, and the environmental side. And the one that Deb's highlighted there is in relation to a green infrastructure assessment that is actually required to be done at this stage of the process. And yeah, we're working with consultant partners, EDP, on who do an awful lot of work for both private and public sector in this field, and they'll continue throughout the process on that. But at this stage, it's at that sort of strategic level then that they're looking at what our assets are and what should our putting forward recommendations on what our sort of objectives, ambitions should be in terms of our having regard to what our GI strategy is as a council. So that will be there, as I say, for the benefit of for the consultation as a supporting document, but the elements of it will be brought into the main preferred strategy as well.
Thanks, Deb, and thanks, Tom. Are there any other questions and comments on that before we move on? I can't see anyone. So, okay. Well, thank you both. Thanks, Tom. And we'll get that link out to committee members in the minutes.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, agenda point 6. That's the local area energy plan. We've got Andy with a report for us on that.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everybody. You'll have seen from your papers that the reports and the local area energy plan takes up probably about 95% of all the paperwork you've got this afternoon. Hopefully you've read every single word and it makes sense to you. If not, I'll give you a quick précis and overview of the report itself. So I was before you, I think, last in December when we were still developing the plan. We were still working. We'd worked through a lot of it. We were still in the development of the actions for the plan. In the spring, those were agreed, and the final plan was presented for information to Cabinet on the 16th of May. And since then, the consultants that we've been working with have been working to produce an accessible version of the plan so that we can publish it on our website. And having done that, they're now working on producing a Welsh translated version of that, which will also have then to be converted into an accessible format. To give the overview of the plan, it's a strategic plan to achieve net zero by 2050 for the city and county of Swansea area. It takes into account our energy systems, the ones that we have now, and the ones that we're going to need in the future, looking at generation, transmission, storage, and the future demands that are going to be placed upon the system. The whole process is driven by Welsh Government. It's not something we've come up with as a council. It's something that Welsh Government have rolled out across the whole of Wales with a a national energy strategy, regional energy plans, and local area energy plans as well. And they appointed consultants, City Science, to work with us in the Southwest region alongside Neath Talbot and Carmarthenshire. Pembrokeshire had already produced their plan at this stage because of the work they had been doing previously. So although it's for Swansea area, there has been a large level of regional collaboration in aligning plans together. And there's also been broad stakeholder engagement throughout the process across different sectors, not just those within industry, but looking at the domestic sector, looking at community sector as well, also looking at the way that the plan will impact in terms of poverty as well, in terms of anti-poverty strategies. So the plan itself, there are two documents to it. The one that you've had with the report is the local area energy plan, which is the high level document. And that gives an outline of what we're planning to do, but it is underpinned by a technical annex, which goes into more detail and provides very specific data, which we haven't, if we'd have put it into the main report, would have just made it just too hard for everybody to read. So within the plan, there were three pathways that were considered. There was, as a baseline, the do nothing pathway, which is just keeping going as we have been at present. There was widespread engagement, which places a great emphasis on behaviour change within the general public. It quite requires widespread take-up of things such as heat pumps, significant use of public transport, a high level of electric vehicle adoption across all vehicles, not just domestic vehicles. And within that, the use of hydrogen is mainly confined mainly to industry, alongside greater electrification of industry as well. And the third pathway was the widespread hydrogen pathway, which is more top-down driven, looking at the hydrogen infrastructure as a key driver for heating, hydrogen fuel for industry and key fuel for heavy vehicles, although it would still require private transport to be electrified, and public transport would still have to be increased in terms of the levels of use. Within the plan, at the moment, the option that Swansea have taken is to go down the widespread engagement route. And I say at the moment because throughout this is a plan for 2050. There are decision points, which are milestones, which may affect how we may actually change and choose a different path later on, such as in, I think, 2026, when there's the decision from UK government regarding how hydrogen might be used in terms of heating and how that might be rolled out. The plan is broken up into 6 different types of intervention areas. There's building efficiency and retrofit. There is building heating, transport, industry, renewable generation, and energy network impacts. And those are all assessed then against the carbon emissions, the likely costs, and the impact in terms of energy reduction. So when we were developing the plan, we had a large number of actions that people wanted to do. You think of the wide number of stakeholders that were involved in this. So through a series of workshops, we refined them down to 15. And some of those were cross-cutting enabling actions, such as how we looked at the governance, how we developed skills programs, how we embedded the LEAP into broader council processes. There were the actions around building efficiency and retrofit and heat. There are specific actions around transport, some around generation and network actions, and some relating specifically to industry. Now, as we've been working regionally, it has to be said, some of those actions are just for Swansea. Others, they are shared priorities across the region. So they impact on us locally, but they are shared across the region in terms of, in each local area, we want to be, we all want the same thing. And there are other ones which require, the only way we're going to deliver them is through regional cooperation. So for example, when we look at transport actions, then all of those link very much into the regional transport strategy. We're looking at enhancing how we enhance active travel and public transport, how we facilitate low and zero carbon vehicle in public fleet, and how we improve the accessibility of EV generation. And although we can do it on a local level, it very much ties into how we can work collectively to actually drive this forward. As I highlighted at the beginning, some of these things are out of our control as well. So there are some risks. We're dependent on what the UK and Welsh government policies are. Very much dependent on funding. And I say that because the indicative costs behind the plan suggest £32.6 billion as a sector cost. Now, obviously, as a local authority, we don't have that money, and no local authority has that money to invest in that sort of level. So part of the work that we do and linking into the regional energy plan and into the national strategy is how we actually feed back and work collectively with other local authorities to access that funding through Welsh Government or through others, or through changes in policy that might be able to assist us on that side. To mitigate that, what we are trying to do at the moment is focus on the actions that are within our control. So where we can change things locally, where we can work on behaviour change. The plan sets out short, medium and long-term goals. So what we are looking at is what we are able to do now. And we're basically getting through the elephant one bite at a time at the moment. And through that, we're looking to engage and influence other stakeholders who are outside of our control. So we're not. This is not Swansea Council's plan. This is a plan for the Swansea Council area. So we have to influence our other stakeholders in the public sector, in the private sector, in the community sector, and not just influence, but engage with as well, because there will be strong points that each of those stakeholders will actually have in actually taking that journey. It's something that we've got to do together. So as I said, the final report was agreed. The documents are being translated as we speak. Once we get the documents translated, then we're going to publish them onto the website. We've established a regional governance structure. So the corporate joint committee, which was their energy core group, is now the regional local area plan group. So the idea is that we're coordinating our actions at a local level and bringing them back, so we are making sure that we are aligned at a regional level. And that in turn allows us to then feed back into Welsh Government. As I said, we're taking forward the actions that we have control of. We're looking to engage with the electricity and gas network operators, and they're being brought in as subject matter experts into the regional local area energy plan group. And one of the early actions that we're doing in terms of looking at industry is how we engage with the South Wales industrial cluster by becoming a member. And that's something that as Swansea we wanted to take forward. But since we've put into our plan, then the other local authorities are also looking to take that forward as well. Does anyone have any questions or comments on that? Councillor Rice.
Thank you, Andy. That's really comprehensive and really good. There are just two areas I'd like to pick up on, both to do with actions, where I think, as you well said, is where can the council actually take control and what's enabled to be able to do. First one is relatively small but has a big impact, and that's to do with EV charging. At the moment, the council appears to be struggling and trying to find the way in which it can enable local residents, certainly in areas where there are terrace housing, to be able to have EV charge points. At the moment, our policy appears to be that we don't allow people to put anything or any trunking into the paving or pavement of the local authority, which seems to be very much in a minority view. Across the rest of the country, everybody else seems to allow local residents to do that or enables them to do that. So I think that's something that we need to look at, because I certainly know in the Uplands area, I'm having lots of requests, people wanting to be able to put EV charge points or being able to charge from their homes in terraced environments, okay, and I'm sure that would be the case for large swathes of the city. And there appear to be really good positive policies elsewhere in the country, which we could probably just pick off the shelf and run with. And the second area really is a bit more bigger scale and more strategic. I really warm to hear what you're doing with the industrial side of things and what you just mentioned in the last few comments you made. I know about 2 years ago almost, I raised the idea of a circular economy within industry, where everyone uses each other's waste to as byproducts as their energy or their product supplies. And I think that would be a really good thing to have a look at. And the example that seems to be working very well is from Denmark, and it's called Kalundborg. So I don't know if anybody's got a chance to have a look at that. That could be very useful for the developments on Fabian Way and what's been proposed there, especially with hydrogen. So I just thought I'd leave those 2 points out there. But great amount of work, and appreciate all the efforts that have been put into that.
Thank you. Those are useful comments. In terms of the EV charging, then we're working with our colleagues in transport, just to look at how we can roll it out, because we're not alone in having a high proportion of terraced housing, and it's only, in terms of the targets that are set around EV vehicles, it's only going to become a greater issue as we go along. We're looking also at how we can possibly introduce charging hubs, but this will also link into some of the regional work that we'll be doing as well, and trying to draw from other ideas of other people. But at this stage, we are very early on in that process. And regarding the circular economy, I'm not familiar with that. If you could send me a link, I'd be really interested to know more about that, because for each part of the plan, we haven't got all the answers. We're very much drawing, not within Wales, we haven't got all the answers. We're looking to England, where some of the local area plans are more developed, where some areas of it have been contracted out. We're looking to find out what's the best way that we can actually deliver this, because we've got to be creative. And certainly the idea of a circular economy, where we are making best use of the resources that we have, for me would definitely make sense. Andrea?
Thank you, Chair. Is it okay if I come in?
Yes, please do, Councillor Lewis.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just in response to Councillor Rice's question, just expanding a bit on what Andy has said. At the moment, the Highways Act doesn't lend itself to us having trailing cables across pavements, obviously for safety reasons. And highways are nervous about allowing for trunking and pathways to be dug into the pavement and the highway to put leads to the front curb so that people can charge their cars. The other difficulty is, of course, if someone pays their car tax, they can park their car anywhere. And with the terraced properties, there is no guarantee that the space outside someone's property is able to be used by that owner-occupier. So there are a number of difficulties there, but there are some trials that we're looking at, and we're actually going out to seek phase 3 funding for our EV charging infrastructure at the moment. And as an example, we recognise that people who live in the marina, in flats, are not going to have dedicated parking spaces and be able to charge. So we're looking at a hub in one of the marina car parks, just to give you an example. So wherever there's grant funding and there are opportunities, we will explore them. But the area for this kind of EV charging infrastructure is still fraught with difficulties and challenges at the moment. But we'll continue to watch what other authorities are doing and do everything that we can. We recognise that people who live in terrace properties haven't got the dedicated driveways, and they're really keen to go green, and we're keen to help support them to do that.
Thank you, Councillor Lewis. Jeff, did you want to come in on that point as well?
I didn't want to come on that point. No, I think Councillor Lewis dealt with that much better than I could have done. And it goes to show that this is beyond just the property side of things, and it covers not just all the whole authority, but all of the region. Thanks really to Andy for putting this together and being the driving force on the project management side of things for the authority, and without him this wouldn't have been achieved. So I just wanted to sort of put my thanks down for him in particular. On the wider point that Councillor Rice was referring to with regards to circular economy and other options, again, it just reinforces the fact this is a regional solution, because don't forget, most of Fabian Way doesn't sit within the Swansea boundaries, it sits beneath Talbot. So we have these wider discussions with our colleagues. The core group has now become the LEAP officer group, and it will feed into the CJC, which will be the energy subcommittee, is going to be the I think the governance route for LEAPs regionally, and that will feed into national government. So that's incredibly important, because we can only really inform those wider discussions, as Andy pointed out, £30+ billion, and we're not alone in that in terms of that high level costing of other authorities, huge price tags, and so it will be important on those action points that we won't be the owner of all of those, hopefully only a few that we do have some form of control of when it comes to wider governance and collaboration. The rest will have to be owned by others, and industry in particular will have to take a form of ownership. There are industry forums out there. They need to be better organised and better structured, and that's coming. And what we're trying to do is make sure we don't have too many disparate routes for these sorts of discussions, because there's been a lot of a different forum, and I think we're getting the point of having better understanding of what's needed. The action plan will change. There's another 26 years to go with the action plan, and we'd be very, very surprised if the same action plan at the end of this period as it is now. And just because we've looked at hydrogen, for example, as a route, that may not be the route, but it's dependent upon what happens in Pembrokeshire and what happens in national government in terms of support and pointing us in that particular direction. But it was just an opportunity to look at a particular route map as to how we could get to net zero as a whole. It is a huge piece of work. Welcome further discussion in this group if we get to the point of needing some guidance about how we take some of these particular strands in a particular direction, and this group will undoubtedly have a role to play in that. But I want to make it clear, it isn't just us. It's much wider than us. Okay.
Thanks, Jeff. Yeah, absolutely. I was just wondering, Andy, for people who aren't familiar with the South Wales Industrial Cluster, would you be able to maybe just give the committee a little description of what sort of membership that has?
Yeah, I can do my best. It's not, I mean, the South Wales Industrial Cluster is, I mean, we're at an early stage in terms of looking to engage with them, but they have representatives from the energy industry, other industrial partners from the whole. It's across the whole of South Wales, though. So it's not just, I say, not just the southwest. It goes as far as Cardiff. It's coordinated by. Just find my notes on this side. So it's coordinated by Net Zero Industry Wales. And they are the ones that have actually looked at. There are other public sector bodies that are members of the group. I think actually within the South Wales area, I think, or Southwest Wales region, I think Pembroke might already be a member, and I think Bridgend within South Wales are also a member. So we wouldn't be the first local authority, but they are very few and far between at the moment. So it's very much a forum where we can start to engage with industry as a local authority and look at what our shared needs are in that side.
That's great. Thank you, Andy. Are there other questions, comments from committee members? Can't see anything at the moment. No. Okay, thank you. I know personally from my ward, going back to Councillor Lewis and Councillor Rice's point, there are areas, speaking from a personal example from my ward in Castle, I'm very sympathetic that there are a lot of areas where you do have terrace housing, very narrow streets, and quite a resource, quite limited amount of on-street parking and narrow roads. We have been looking in Castle at a more public hub as well, as Councillor Lewis mentioned, in the marina, so that there are areas where people can go and charge their electric vehicles in a more in a more spacious area than their on-street parking. So that is something that we've been looking at, I think, in a couple of different wards. So thank you for bringing that up as well. Are there any other questions on any other aspects of the LAP? No, I think you're off the hook now then, Andy.
Okay, thanks very much, everybody.
Okay, thank you very much. That was really great. It's really technical and there's a lot in it and it covers so much. So very grateful for your update, and thank you for putting something that's so broad and quite unwieldy into a digestible format. Thank you. Okay, so that brings us on to item 7, the work plan 24 to 25. I do want to bring to the committee's attention that for the meeting in the 2nd of December, we were scheduled to have the Swansea Council Sustainable Food Policy draft coming to committee, but we are currently re-looking at that and thinking that perhaps that might not be ready to come to council at that point. So we are considering maybe replacing that with a workshop, and I will be writing to committee members to ask them about, I know that in the past we've discussed having some workshops on more deep dives into some of the more complex topics that we can have. So I would imagine that committee members would be happy with that development. But I will be writing to committee members to ask you what sort of topics you would like to see covered in a greater detail in a workshop. So that will be coming round to you. Do you have any questions or comments on that at the moment, or are you happy to discuss it offline? I'll take that as a we're happy to discuss it offline. So that, I think, brings us to the end of the meeting. The next meeting will be Monday the 21st of October at 3 p.m. Hopefully we'll be back in chamber by then, filming notwithstanding. So we should be back to hybrid format again at that point, but if there isn't, then we'll let you know. Okay, thank you very much and good afternoon.
Thanks, Jen.